talk about your mom too. I think that's so interesting. She was an educator.
Yes, she was an English teacher.
Started you in that vein of trying to get a good education and learn more?
Well, I've always believed that education is the great equalizer. And in America, with a good education, anybody can be anything they want to be. And yes, my mother had great influence on that, obviously. She taught me English for 4 years. But I'm the product of public education. I believe in public education, but I believe in all education. And I think we're lifelong learners. And I think when we stop being inquisitive and wanting to learn, things that are not so good happen to us. So I believe that education is that which levels the field for everybody.
Did that attitude sort of help take you forward in the South, being a woman as a female lawyer, especially in those early days? Probably not number one or not high on the list for a lot of people.
Well, it's interesting because I think you have to marry education with a good attitude and not carry biases with you. My daddy used to tell me all the time that I should always use my femininity as my asset and never as my crutch or my excuse. And that's kind of how I've gone through life. And I've been influenced by and have stood on the shoulders of some wonderful men. And so, I think the right attitude, seeing something that needs to be done and doing it, that is what's so special about my having been here on this island for 47 years, because it was very young and there was not an art center, right? There was not the hospital had just opened when I moved here. But a lot of the cultural enrichments and a lot of the things that we now sometimes take for granted weren't here then. And so I had a magnificent opportunity to make a difference. And, I tell people all the time, the greatest gift in the world is giving, not receiving. Our island is still an island that is got a deep chasm between the haves and the have-nots. And I think we have a responsibility and an obligation to make sure that everyone does well here.
Talk to me a little bit about your role with the charities, with that side of things too, that was so.
Got an early start, 14 years old in Estill, South Carolina, and I chaired the March of Dimes Walkathon for Estill against Hampton, and they were much bigger than were we. And I decided we were going to win, and we did. But it wasn't me, right? It was that can-do spirit, but that enlightened me about how good it feels to make a difference and to help others, and how little it requires of us. And so that started me on my journey of not-for-profits and caring about other people. I get up every morning and put that part of my being on in a new way and try to have new eyes. And for me, it's made all the difference in my life. Such a blessing. And I'm just fortunate I've got Bill who supports all of that. So I worked in our family law firm here for years, and then I went and ran the education lottery. But education, so there's this common thread, right, that runs through. That helps people who otherwise might not be able to go to college to get a college education or further their education in some way. And it funds libraries and it funds school buses. And, those things make a good difference. I went to the University of South Carolina and was there with Dr. Harris Pastides for 2.5 or 3 years. And now I'm running a wholesale drug distribution company. I tell people I went from gambling to drugs. I mean, I have done nothing by myself, zero. And anybody who tells you they do anything alone, they're not telling you the truth. I have stood on great shoulders. I have learned from every person I've ever been with. I have friends who cover the gamut, and they are blessings for me, and I learn from them, and I realize from them that as long as I've got some energy, I have to keep going.
What does it mean now, if you can tell me sort of that Women's History Month with the next generation and many generations forward, that maybe you can be that leader in some form? What does that mean to you, or what can you tell that next generation?
It's interesting. I think with each generation, the path maybe is not necessarily easier, but it's different, right? So the glass ceiling may still be there, but it's cracked. And I think that my generation has been an example for the next generation. I think that, in fairness, this next generation has figured out a better balance than we had. And then I don't think that we can ever kind of underestimate how COVID changed us as a people. And remote work, and children being home for a long time, right? We had to figure out a way. And sometimes that's the mother of invention.
You got to tell me about the bee now, too.
So I wear a bumblebee on my shoulder 365 days of the year. I have a hive, and it goes back to my daddy. When I was 17 years old, I was sitting with my daddy watching the news one night. He was reading a magazine and he said, "Sweetheart, listen to this. Aerodynamically, bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly because their body weight in comparison to their wingspan is such that they shouldn't be able to leave the ground." But nobody ever told the bumblebee that, so he flies anyway. When I moved to Hilton Head and won an award in 1979, my sister, who I've now lost to cancer, and my husband, Bill, gave me a bumblebee. And that bumblebee is now my be all you can be bee, represents my daddy, and sits on my right shoulder to keep me straight every day and to remind me not to quit.